Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Nadelsky, Executive Director of the Mendel Center and Director of the Economic Club of Southwestern Michigan Speaker Series. Welcome to tonight's presentation, Mental Health Pandemic, the Crisis Within the Crisis. I know we still have some folks who are going to be joining us, but we are at 7 o'clock, so we're going to get started, and folks can join in as they arrive. So I did want to let you know that the speaker series has suspended our membership this season and moved virtual in reaction to the pandemic. And so we're offering the pay what you can model, and next year, hopefully we'll be starting live events again, but it's been great to go locally with our presentations and virtually and be able to continue our mission to bring quality presentations to Michigan's Great Southwest. We do have two more events coming up. One is in February. The topic is justice and advocacy. And then in April, we'll be taking a local and a statewide look at the economy in terms of the current state and also future trends. So those are the two presentations that'll be coming up after the holidays into late winter and early spring. So hopefully you'll join us for those as well. And I did want to let you know, of course, you can always go to themendelcenter.com and see all of the other shows and presentations and offerings that we have available. So now about tonight's speakers. First, Dr. Bernice Patterson is a passionate and talented psychologist, speaker, consultant, preacher, published author, and trainer. She is the founder and CEO of Infinity Consultation Group, where she provides interactive trainings on issues of cultural diversity and inclusion, self-care and burnout prevention, and mental health and spirituality. Her life's work is to give voice to the mental and emotional struggles that people commonly face and guide them towards a place of healing and empowerment. She is a firm believer that you can have Jesus and a therapist too. Patterson is a proud wife and mother of two amazing little boys. And Tasha Turner is a licensed professional counselor, consultant, and community educator. She is passionate about educating the community on the connection between mental and physical health. She is a trained sociologist and professional counselor, having a master's of arts in each discipline. She is a psychotherapist and independent consultant specializing in trauma and resilience with a particular focus on child and family development. For the past 3 years, Turner has developed a mental health focused community education curriculum for Spectrum Health Lakeland. And again, tonight's topic is mental health pandemic, the crisis within the crisis. Welcome to both of you. The format tonight is a little bit different than we normally do, if there is such a thing as normal right now. But I'm gonna step out of the way and give you to the floor, and you'll be moderating, and then I'll jump back in when you're ready, and we'll take questions from our participants. And in order, if you missed the opening slides, participants, to ask your questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can just click on that and ask a question, and we'll keep track of those and get to them when we can. So again, Dr. Patterson, Bernice, and Tasha, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we've got some slides to guide us on our conversation popping up.
Yeah.
There they are. All right. Bernice, you ready?
I am ready, baby.
Me too, girl. Let's go. All right, so a little bit more about us before we get started. So as Mike said, I do all the things, right? And currently, my day job is with Spectrum Health Lakeland, working out of the Population Health Department, where we provide a significant amount of community education on the topics, all the topics within mental health. And so understanding, mental health and wellness, what does it mean to be mentally well? All the way through trauma and trauma-informed care and resilience-focused care as well. I also do private practice and typically work with adolescents and young adults. And I also mom and wife. So I ask for your grace during this. If a mini or a husband comes in looking confused, I just ask for your grace. We all navigate this space. And I also currently am directing the mental health services coming out of the Center for Better Health, which is where Bernice comes in.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. My name is Dr. Bernice Patterson, and I am super excited to be here this evening, working with my friend and colleague who, yeah, Shiro. So I definitely appreciate you sharing this space with me tonight, sweetie. So professionally, kind of in the same boat with Tasha, doing too many of the things at all the time, but definitely trying to walk in purpose. So as Mike said, I am the founder and CEO of Infinity Consultation Group, which is a dream that was birthed a couple of years ago, that has really afforded me the opportunity to go out into the community and really begin to push back against a lot of stigma around issues of mental health, cultural diversity and inclusion, and my sweet spot in love, just mental health and spirituality. But I also have a small private practice where I do provide pastoral counseling. I'm a licensed and ordained minister of the gospel. So what's in me comes out of me. So I'm gonna warn y'all now, I'm a Baptist preacher. So we're gonna watch the clock because it takes me a minute to close. But in being that, I get the wonderful opportunities to preach and share the word. But I'm also been blessed to be a part of the wonderful Center for Better Health. And I'm the clinical supervisor for our mental health and wellness center. So it has definitely been a joy and a pleasure to help get services, quality services, not leftover, not crumbs, but quality, meaty services out to the community. So we are excited to really help stretch your thinking around mental health in the pandemic tonight.
So to kick us off, we wanted to just kind of frame the conversation around, what this current climate really is. Mike alluded to it, and I even giggled about it myself. So, we are in unprecedented times, both as it relates to our mental health and our physical health, and really understanding like where are we at, what is the context of this conversation, why are we even having it? I'm sure there may be other things you could have been doing at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, but you chose to be here. So, obviously, we all know that we are in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, and in a space where I don't know about you, Bernice, but it feels like there might be some real light shining through as we're getting to the space of having a viable vaccine,
Yes.
getting those numbers down. But, at the end of the day, we are definitely still in the throes. And then frankly, also understanding that life didn't stop just because a pandemic started.
Right.
And in the summer, we saw, a large amount of civil unrest as, the murder of George Floyd and other unarmed Black and brown people, killed at the hands of the police and movement around that. And then we moved into election season and I feel like it's still election day because that hasn't ended yet, right? It just keeps going. And so there's all of these things that are happening while we're trying to deal with being in the survival mode of a pandemic. And then on top of that, just locally. So if you've heard us talk out of Spectrum Health Lakeland, you've probably heard me mention before about our community health needs assessment. And I say it multiple times because it's important. And I know Bernice shares in this philosophy that if somebody says it more than once, you probably should listen. In our CHNA, our community health needs assessment, which we do every 3 years, what we found the last 2 cycles, so over the span of 6 years, is that mental health for the residents of Berrien County is a top priority health need. And this was pre-corona, right? So pre the pandemic, we knew that our residents here in Berrien County were the most concerned about mental health and wellness, for those who live, work, and play here. So just wanted to kind of set the stage with that. Bernice, I don't know if you have anything to add before we move forward.
Yeah, I think one thing that keeps sticking out for me is the fact that none of us were trained for this.
Mm-hmm.
I have talked to many pastors, to clinicians, to moms, sitting here waiting in the pickup line. None of us took a class on how to live life in the midst of a pandemic. And life didn't slow down, like as you said, just because we are in a pandemic. I shared with you earlier today, the matriarch of our family actually passed away this morning. And as painful as that is, and, just that reality, it's like, we still keep moving. And, the question is in the midst of that constant moving, how are we taking care of ourselves? Are we taking that moment to take a step back, and honor where we are in the midst of this climate? I so just respected the fact that you were like, hey, like, let's just take a breath. Like, can you do this tonight? Because if not, we gonna make it do what it do. But just to have that grace for individuals and having that grace for yourself in the midst of this current climate, because the reality is, you haven't trained for this. We covered a whole lot of stuff in grad school, and I know you got 2 master's degrees, bless your entire heart. But just that reality, like, there's no pandemic class, and they don't go over, hey, by the way, you're going to be a stay-at-home parent all of a sudden, and you still got to do your regular job. And, short people are going to walk in the middle of your meeting while you trying to keep it together and be polished, and somebody wants you to open up a package of snacks. There's all of these things that
are you calling out my child, Bernice? Are you calling out my child?
Now, that's my homie. Let me tell you, he brightens our meetings every week. But like, my youngest keeps walking in the meetings, and now he'll open the door and pull it back and close it as if the door still wasn't shut, which means mommy's in a meeting. But like, there's all of these things that we are dealing with that we just I think that there's times when we feel like we're getting our bearings, and we feel like, okay, I figured out a rhythm. And then something else comes in, and then it's like, okay, I found this new rhythm. And then something else comes in. And then just trying to make life still feel special at this time. I know we both have 2 small ones, and plus you have my half-grown young lady also. But just trying to make holidays feel special and make birthdays feel special when things look so different.
Yeah.
But the reality is our kids are also in the middle of a pandemic. And what does that mean for them, and giving them the space to honor their story in the midst of a pandemic? So I think we all need to just take a moment to congratulate yourself. Like, baby, you made it to December 17, 2020. Like, that alone is worth
the year that has lasted 70 whole months, right? Like, the never-ending year.
Listen, we are in the 12th level of Jumanji, and I'm just waiting to see the llamas in the street. Like, it's beyond real at this point. But I think we get so caught in this focus on, I need to be grinding, I need to be hustling, I should have wrote that book this year. Sweetheart, if you just managed to survive and get to today, congratulate yourself. You did a great thing. So,
Exactly.
I think we need to be cognizant of all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into our next point, and just talking about what has the impact of this whole pandemic situation been. There has been, rightly so, a lot of focus on the physical health side of things, but we are here in particular to talk about, well, what has this done for us on the inside when it comes to our mental health? And Bernice, I think you kind of started to touch on it a little bit, but this idea that we have been operating in survival mode since March.
Yes.
Really, if you think about it, we have literally been fighting to survive since March. And being in survival mode is much different than just everyday, stresses mode. Right? Like, you can feel the difference in your body. You can feel the difference in the way that you think. I mean, I know it isn't not me and you, because we're like amazingly perfect mothers, but some mothers may find that fuse is a little bit shorter, right? Yes. That tolerance is a little bit lower, because there are things happening within your body when you're in survival mode, right? We talk about those survival responses, that fight, flight, freeze. And that's not only real, but it can be prolonged. And when it's prolonged, you're not your best self, right? Or the people around you may not be their best self for either extended period of times or once in a while. And so it's important to understand that, I preach this all the time, and Bernice, you know it, that our physical health and our mental health can't be separated.
Come on.
Right? Because it's just our health at the end of the day. It's two sides of the same coin. And if we only focus on one, well, we're going to slip and miss out on the other.
Yes. And I love the way you say that it's 2 sides of the same coin, but yet how much attention do we necessarily give one of those sides of the coin? We watch it deteriorate and we make excuses for it. and we try to shove it up underneath underneath the rug. You know, I was looking at a meme today, and it really struck home to me because it talked about how a lot of times African American women, we will not identify ourselves as being depressed or anxious. We'll call ourselves as failing. And I wonder how many of us
Oh,
this year have looked at ourselves and said, I'm failing, versus
mhm.
honoring the fact that I'm living in a pandemic and it's affecting my ability to feel like myself. It's affecting my levels of anxiety. It's affecting my depression. You know, feeling this sense of anxiousness and anxiety at this regular kind of resting moment. You know, and
Well, can I add to that a little bit?
yeah.
Because that idea of I'm failing, you know, we see so often, we're just so hard on ourselves when we have those survival responses. And what I would like for all of us to remember is that those survival responses are there for a reason,
Yes.
right? You're not abnormal for trying to survive in whatever that looks like. And that's our brain trying to protect us. So you have to extend yourself grace for the fact that your brain is just trying to figure it out. Can I talk about the brain for a sec? Can I do it?
Please, please.
Because you know how I feel about the brain.
Just park for a moment and go right there. Stay right
Just a
there.
smidge. I just
Go
want to
ahead.
stay with it for a second.
Go ahead.
So for those who haven't had the pleasure of being in Trauma 101, where we talk about the brain, I just want to educate you real quick. So when we're talking about the survival part of the brain, it's important to have a little bit of context. So I like to teach people about the brain using the hand model, right? You know that's my go-to.
Right there.
So if we take our brain out, it's gonna be our hand, it's gonna be our brain. Our brain it tends to develop from the bottom up, right? So this part, our wrist and this meaty area is going to represent our brain stem. That's your survival brain, the things that you don't have to think about, your fight, flight, freeze, your breathing, your blinking, your digestion, those automatic processes live here, right? Survive. If I had to sit here and tell my heart to beat, I don't think I'd make it. As much as I love you, Bernice, I don't think I'd make it.
No.
If you move up into this area, fold your thumb in, that's going to represent your limbic area of the brain, right? Your emotions are stored there. A lot of memory happens in that space. But your thumb is going to be your amygdala and your hippocampus. Your amygdala is like your brain's smoke detector. Okay. Now stay with me. If we fold our hand over, this bumpy part here, this is going to represent your cortex, right? So if you see a picture of the brains, all the little gray swirls, that's here. This is your thinking brain. This is your wise brain where your choices live, your executive functioning that says, I'm gonna go ahead and log on to this program at 7 o'clock, right? Those choices live there. When your amygdala, it wiggles in there a little bit, senses or gets a signal from your hippocampus. I know some big words, but think of it like your Amy and your hippo. When your hippo tells little Amy that there's danger in the environment and it sends the signal, we call it flipping our lid. Because what happens is it sends that signal down to the survival brain. It's like, help, right? And this part, your cognitive part, it goes offline. It is no longer in charge.
Right.
Your survival brain is in charge. Your instincts are in charge. And then eventually the threat is gone and it comes back down. But when we're constantly thrown into survival mode, we're not in that part of our brain that goes through all of those steps and processes of, oh, I should do this, and then the consequences will be that. If we're living down here, that's an automatic response from your smoke detector, right? Saying there's danger in the environment.
Right.
And that is a normal human process. If that happens to you, you ain't nothing but human, and that's good.
Thank you.
So when we talk about being in this pandemic and being in survival mode, we're literally talking about being outside of our best brain, right? And that's just a normal response.
And when you say that, and I'm mad that you just gave me a whole neuropsych refresher for free. So y'all just,
I'm so excited about the brain.
Rest in that. But the idea of grace for that, you know, I'm a firm believer that we have to operate in a pace of grace, because if we get out of that pace, that's when we begin to be harder on ourselves. We begin to hold ourselves to these unrealistic expectations. And then we get mad at the hippo for telling Amy to do her job, you know? And here's the thing, in that switch being thrown, as you said, that's healthy. That's how you were built to survive. But do you have enough grace for yourself to still have an expectation that it's okay for that to have happened? Or do you feel as if somehow you've fallen short for your family because you need to fold up your Wonder Woman cape and send that joker to the cleaners and tell it, I will pick you up eventually, but today it doesn't fit. Today it
Mhm.
more like it's choking me than empowering me. So, can we operate from this place of grace in the midst of all of these impacts that are happening day in and day out? Not to mention, excuse me, just the physical things that are happening from the mental health place. I have people talking about, I'm having headaches, I'm having digestive problems, and people who have had
I
COVID.
can't sleep.
Ma'am, have sat up here and sang all the lyrics to God Rest You Merry Gentlemen all the night and have not rested yet with them gentlemen, doing all of these things. And even those who have had COVID and are considered long haulers and have had
Mm.
um, these strained out symptoms, and how that impacts people's mental health. So
Yeah.
now it's like my chest feels tight. Is this a residual from COVID? Am I having a panic attack? What's happening to my body? And just the depression that can cause to feel
Mhm.
out of control of your circumstances, out of your body, out of just your agency to fight for yourself. So
Yes.
we have to come from this place of grace, and be willing to give it. Because I don't know about you, I need grace from folks right now. I know it's been some days I
All
definitely
day.
have not been Elder Patterson the way I needed to be. I have been cranky. I've had an attitude because the sun was shining and mad because it was and wasn't at the same time. Like we have to have this grace that we're willing to extend to other people, because here's the catch. Last time I checked, we were all human.
Mhm.
And last time I checked, the struggle may not look the same for each of us, because everybody not crossing this ocean in the same kind of boat. Some folks sitting in
Mm-mm.
yachts, some people is in paddle boats, and some folks are just trying to swim the best they know how. But
Mhm.
the reality is we're all trying to cross it. So where is
Absolutely.
your grace? Where is your grace for self? Where is your grace for each other?
Well, and I mean, I think also, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of those things that might be setting off our Amy's, right? We think about it's not just the virus itself, but
Mm.
there's a lot of environmental factors.
Man,
People are coming and talking about finances and education. So I wonder if you could spend a little bit of time talking about how the environment can
mhm.
impact our mental wellness.
Yes. So when you had mentioned even George Floyd's murder, both of us are married to Black men. And I don't know about you, I live very, very close to the grocery store. I live almost across the street. Actually, I do. I live across the street from our grocery store. And there is this instinctual, I have no control over it, pit of anxiety that happens when my husband goes to the grocery store and I hear sirens before I see his face again.
Mhm.
And understandably, yep, I'm supposed to see the police as helpful. I'm supposed to see them as a place of safety, but I also live in the United States in the year 2020. So I
Mhm.
also understand that there is a sense of unrest. There is a sense of feeling out of control of the safety of those who I love and who I care about. So, my husband's phone is low jacked. I'm like, pimping, I need to be able to find you and make
Wherever
sure.
and whenever.
Listen, and will
Mhm.
quickly call his phone and be like, where are you at? Are you in the store? Are you like, I need to know so that I can take a breath. You know, Imagine just how stressful that is. Here you are working and you doing your thing, and I'm up here doing a presentation and I hear sirens. So now I no longer care about being Dr. Patterson, this thing that I'm good at doing and this thing that I take pride in. Now I'm down in that reactionary, I'm down in that brainstem of, are the people I love safe?
Yeah.
And then I think about, you talked about finances. I think so many people are struggling financially, and people who are not accustomed to struggling financially. You
Mhm.
know, if you've never had to rob Peter to pay Paul or try to make a dollar out of 15 cents, just the stress that comes from trying to make that happen. And it's
Yeah.
not to say it's not stressful for people who have experience in it, but I think the stress hits differently. Because if I feel like I have the skills on how to operate with less, I'm not walking in blind. But if I've never had to operate off of less, if I've never had to apply for Medicaid, if I've never had to deal with DHS and the shame that can come from saying, hey, I need to apply for a bridge card just so I can feed my kids, you know, I think about especially a lot of my male clients and how so much of their identity is wrapped up in being a provider and taking care of their families. And they're like, my ability to do or even be who I know myself to be has been thoroughly disrupted and turned on its ear. Who am I now? If I'm not the guy, if I'm not the guy who goes out and I work and I bring home the check, then who am I? And so now we're getting this discord in our marriage because I'm beefing with you and I'm not even sure why I'm beefing with you. I just know I'm not feeling good about me. And I don't know how to voice that. And I don't know how to give words to that because unfortunately, so many of us are emotionally illiterate. We do not have the language to talk about what we're actually experiencing. So I think when we frame it in that sense of where is this coming from, you know, and how all the different ways that it's coming, and even the ways okay, I'm a hush in about 12 seconds because this just hit me in my gut. For those of us who do practice a faith, you know, there is something about gathering in the assembly. You know, even the Bible says, forsake not the assembling of the saints. There's something about, you know, when I get to go to church and lay out and have me a Holy Ghost good time and sweated off all my makeup and had, you know, some Holy Ghost cardio. There's something about that that charges me up for the week. And to think about, I have not had that experience since March. Here we're thinking it's gonna be, you know, 4 or 5 weeks, maybe, but yet being denied this ability to go and get my recharge, but yet the battery's still running. The battery's still running. Still got to do stuff. Still have to keep being present. But yet the place where I go to get my recharge doesn't feel the same. And I'm not saying, you know, I mean, I'm Zooming church all over the United States every Sunday. It's beautiful. I can hit about 6 services by dinner time. But it's something about being in there and that old mother get to moaning and that deacon starts me in the key of Z because that's the only key he know. It's something about that environment and that community that feeds me that I can't tap into the same way.
Yeah. Well, and you know, you hit it so beautifully, you know, that idea of your resources, what you have versus what you don't have, what you feel like you can overcome versus what you don't. So then, and if we advance to the next slide, if you are stressed out, well, then that makes sense, right? Like the things we just described, you know, the loss that so many people have been experiencing, whether that's loss of loved ones, loss of finances, homes, food, stability, routine, right? Just loss of routine. If that has you in a place where you're not your best self, well, that makes sense.
Right.
And so much of this work, you know, I feel like just giving people permission, give you and giving you permission to give yourself permission to feel whatever it is that you got to feel, to experience your circumstance in whatever way that you experienced it. You know, you talked about being emotionally illiterate, but then even if you had some words, we don't give people permission to use their words, right? You know, I tell my kids all the time, use your words, right? Say something. And I think so much of this conversation that we've been having as mental health professionals is encouraging people to use their words. It is okay to honor what you're experiencing, and it makes sense. I don't know anybody who's just cruising through this unbruised and untouched. I mean, do you?
I haven't met them.
Including myself.
Ma'am, battered, bruised, and tattered. I feel like a Negro spiritual about to happen myself. But could you speak to validating, you know, because you talked about the giving the permission, but the validation of the experience, because it seems like so many people are looking for validation and, you know, they're dumping their stuff out on social media, hoping somebody likes it, hoping somebody will hit an emoji on it that validates their lived experience as a person who's struggling right now.
Oh, validation is so important. I mean, and I want to be clear, you know, a lot of these topics, everything that we're talking about doesn't just apply to pandemic times, right? These are things that we need to be doing as community. We should have been doing pre and we need to be doing post-corona because, you know, it's going to end. At some point, it will end.
Say it one more time for people in the cheap seats.
It will end. But at the end of the day, something else is going to come along. And
Yeah.
if we don't know how to navigate that something else, it's going to be just as bad, if not worse. But that validation piece is so important because people need to know that A, they're important,
Mhm.
that you hear them, and that what they have said or offered to you is of consequence, right?
Yeah.
And so when people lay out their experience, where they are, how they feel, and then have people invalidate and tell them, well, it wasn't really that bad, or it could be worse, or
Ooh,
someone else has it worse than you. That is the direct opposite of empathy, right?
yes.
That takes away from their experience and basically tells them get over it.
Come
And
on.
I think sometimes we try to Brene Brown calls it silver lining it,
Mhm.
right? Where
Mhm.
we offer those things as a way to try to help somebody feel better. But
Mhm.
what it does is it guts you, right?
Yeah.
Because while maybe it could be worse for someone else, this is my worst, right? This is my reality. If it's real to me, then it's real and it's consequence. And so we have to allow people their realities,
Yeah.
even sometimes when it conflicts with our own,
Come
because
on.
that's hard,
That
and
is.
staying out of that place of judgment. So that way we're not only, so that way we're again going back to that extension of grace,
Yeah.
um, allowing people's experience to be theirs. Because like you pointed out the metaphor of being in that ocean, but in different boats.
Mhm.
If you in a rowboat and I'm in a lifesaver and somebody else in a yacht, we all need validation. Our experience is just different.
Are very different. You know, when you just said that what was the word you used? When you talked about how yes, I need to be able to validate it, even if it doesn't feel or hit me the same way. You know, what I
Mhm.
pictured is, you know, how people get caught up in, I want to say something because we get
Yes.
uncomfortable when we say nothing. And I think
Mhm.
we need to get okay with silence. I know that's one of the first things they teach us as therapists is to learn to sit in the silence
Sit in silence.
and just let, as I would say, just let the Lord move. You ain't got to move, just move. But this idea of you don't have to have a response all the time because sometimes your silence is going to speak so much louder than the word of it could be worse. You know, it'll be a lot more healing if you just sit with me in my stuff than necessarily try to fix it because I might not want you to fix it. I might not even be asking you to fix it. I
And
might.
most likely you can't fix it. I don't have a pocket full of jobs and rent money. I don't know about anybody, but you know what I'm saying? Like, very rarely can you fix it for
Right.
someone else. You can make
Right.
it worse, but very rarely can you fix it.
Right. So, you know, and I think about as a therapist, you know, when I'm teaching on, you know, what therapy can look like and just the utility of it, you know, I tell people I love depressed people. Like depressed people make me warm and tingly. And folks are like, that's weird and that's strange. I say, listen, we
Same.
all have the things that make us warm. But a depressed person makes me warm and tingly because I get the privilege of crawling into the pit with you. And it's
Mm,
not my job to build your ladder. Because
mm-mm.
if I build your ladder and you stop talking to me and you fall into another pit, are you going to wait for another Bernice to come by? Or could I sit in the pit with you and encourage you and validate your experience as you gather the material or the skills to build your own ladder? So that
Mhm.
no matter what comes, no matter what goes, I'm able to know that you are equipped to build your own ladder. You know,
Exactly.
and I think that it empowers us to know that we don't have to solve it because I think we feel like we're failing people when we can't fix it. You know,
Yeah.
I know when my kids come to me and they're like, Mommy, Mommy, like they're looking at me like I'm a superhero and I'm supposed to fix it. Well, part of that's just my job to steward them as their parent. But I got two kids. So all of these other folks out here in these streets, not my babies, not who I'm supposed to steward. And to walk a hole in the floor because I can't fix your life
Mhm.
does you no good and it does me no good. But if I would be human enough to say, that sounds hard.
Yeah.
I understand why you're frustrated. You know,
Mhm.
can I give you a well, if you hugging folks in the COVID, but can I just be here with you? Can I
Yeah.
just hold you up in prayer? But take the pressure off of yourself to be like this scratch and sniff miracle worker because you really can't do it.
You can't do it. And that goes back to those realistic expectations, right? Of what we can do uh, within ourselves and with others. And I think so much of that then leads into the next part of our conversation of how in the world we get through this, and this concept of self-care. And that phrase, self-care, 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 is out there in these streets.
Ma'am,
But more and more, I find that people don't understand what it means.
listen, because I really want you to start with this because I love when I hear you tell people self-care is more than that hot bath that you got to go take.
It is more than a bubble bath. It's
Please,
more than a brewski.
come
It's
on.
more than a mani-pedi, right?
Yeah,
Like, don't get me wrong. Those things are valuable and can be part of your
right,
self-care.
right.
But self-care is not just these, little snippets. And it's funny because when I hear people talk about self-care, they talk about it like it's this thing that they snuck into or they
Mhm,
stole the time. And
mhm.
no, self-care needs to be a priority,
Yeah.
right? Like when you talk about your to-do list, you should be at the top. I got to take care of me. I got to refill my cup before I can
Mhm.
pour anything else out.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I'm giving the last of me. I'm giving the scraps of me,
Listen,
right?
the-
And
what's
whether that's
left of
to
me versus what's best of me. Mm,
and when we think about, that's not just professionally, that's
right,
personally, that's
right.
as parents, as brothers, sisters, daughters, husbands,
Mhm.
sons, whatever your role. You can't show up as your best self until you tend to yourself. And
Yeah.
so self-care is, yeah, it can be those beautification things,
Mhm,
it could be, once in a while, maybe. I know sometimes we all just kind of fall out on the couch and watch a little bit of trash TV,
mhm.
but that, think about it as quality time with yourself, right?
Yes.
And I tell my husband, like, quality time is not just sitting here watching this game with you. Like,
Right,
even if we both enjoying the game, we're not connecting.
right.
Self-care is connecting back to yourself. And
Yes.
it can be, yeah, it can be beautification, but it can also be educational self-care.
Mhm.
It can be financial self-care. It can be housing self-care. It can be so, it's all the parts and pieces that make up you.
Right. Oh my God. Like when you said that, the first thing that came to my mind is, especially when I'm working with church folks, there's this sense of shame when we deal with self-care because people feels that it's selfish to
Mm-hmm,
give self-care. And I
mm-hmm.
love to remind people that Jesus was an advocate of self-care. He would heal folks and then be like, all right, I'm gonna get it, y'all. Like, I need to go talk to my daddy. I need to go replenish. Now, you tell me if the savior of the world needs a time out from the disciples, don't tell me you so bad and you so got it together that you don't need a moment to tend to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And even this idea of scheduling it, you think about when you are on an airplane, they always tell you in the event of emergency, an air mask will drop down.
There it
Please put
is.
your mask on yourself before you help someone who is with you. And I
Exactly.
know as a parent, my instinct is always going to be, I'm going to take care of my babies. I'm going to take care of my babies. I'm going to take care of my babies. But I am of no good or no use to them if I am passed out and they're sitting there breathing, panicking because mommy cannot help them.
Oh,
You
there
know,
it is.
if I'm not refilled, nobody can pour out of an empty place. I don't
Mm-mm.
care how motivated you are. I don't care how long you've been in the game. No one can pour out of an empty place.
Not at
And
all.
will we be humble enough to admit that we're coming from a empty place, especially when people consistently think, oh, you're the one who has it together. Like, oh
The
no, Tasha,
strong
no,
friend.
listen, ma'am, like you don't cry, you're not stressed, your marriage
Mm-hmm.
is perfect, your kids is well behaved, your
Mm-hmm.
finances is on point, like everything you do is all together. So I want to challenge people. Will you be married to the false perception that other people have created about you, or will
Oh.
you divorce that and marry your reality?
Mm.
I'm struggling. There's no reason for me to lie to other folks to keep them comfortable,
Mm.
you know? But I think we get so caught in wearing the mask of perfection that we will watch ourselves slowly die and wonder why nobody came to our rescue.
Mm.
You have to be willing to break the glass for yourself.
And then, and coupled with that, right? Because
Mhm.
everything is what I need to do, but then what do we need to do as community? As
Yeah.
my boo thing Tracy would say, hashtag play your part. What do
Mm,
you need to do? Well, when somebody brings you that vulnerability, we need to make it okay to not be okay. If
Right.
someone shares with you that they are struggling or that they just need 5 to 10 before they step into the 15th Zoom meeting of the day, we need to make that okay, right? So not only being bold and brave and courageous to say, I'm going to care for myself first, but then also being empathic and accepting enough to say, you know what, you do that, right?
Right.
As a manager, my team is of no use to me if they are depleted and not even running on fumes, but they pushing the car, right? Ain't no
Listen.
fumes left. So
Thank
what kind of manager and leader would I be if I told them, we'll just work through it? No, I need
Right.
for you to care for yourself so you can even come up and show up to work, right?
Right.
So not only allow people to be brave, encourage them to be brave, but then allow them recognize that and work that into your spaces.
Yes, because we have somehow gotten to this place where we have glamorized overworking ourselves.
Oh, talk
We
about it.
listen, and it's funny, and people even put a church spin on it. Eat, hustle, pray. Baby, don't tie Jesus up with your dysfunction. God has not called me to hustle. My Bible speaks about sweatless victories where I'm not supposed to be toiling all the time, but somehow we feel like it's glamorous to be like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Well, when was the last time you did something for you?
Yes.
When was the last time that you honored your truth, honored your space, honored
Mhm.
your need? Because really, that's where our progress is birthed. You know,
Yes.
I don't birth new things out of a depleted place,
Nope.
because I'm dealing with scraps. I'm just trying to keep the ship moving forward. But it's when I'm full, it's when I'm taken care of, is that my mind is even clear enough to birth something.
Yes.
Because if I'm not doing my self-care, if I'm so stressed out that I feel that I'm stretched thin, I don't have the emotional or creative capacity to try to create new things or try to
Absolutely.
present for other people. So if we can get out of this idea of glamorizing being busy, I always challenge my clients, are you busy or productive? Because those
Ooh.
are two very, very different things.
Mm.
You can have a lot on your schedule and not get nothing done. You know,
Talk about it.
Warren Buffett, who was probably one of the richest men in the world, he brags on the fact that he'll have like 2 or 3 things on his calendar for the day, and that's it. And people are like, how in the world did you do that? He's like, I like me. And if I don't take care of me, who is going to do it?
Who will? Well, and what do we notice? If
Mhm.
you don't take care of you,
Mhm.
eventually your body is going to force you to,
Come on.
right? And
Come on.
and this I want to be clear. We're talking about all of us. So this includes me and you. We
Yeah.
guilty of it. You be having to
Listen.
tell me to sit down sometimes, right?
And you had to
If
tell me the
you
same exact thing.
if you don't take care of yourself before it's a crisis,
Yeah.
your body will shut down on you, right?
Yes.
Stress can cause sickness of all kinds,
Yes.
right? From the minor to the major. And
Mhm.
so self-care, the other reason why it needs to be a priority is because it can't always be when it's a crisis. It can't be if I don't get this PTO, I'm gonna lose my job tomorrow. No, we
Right.
have to take care of ourselves up front. It has to be part of our regular routine so that way we're less likely to get into that crisis
Come
phase,
on. Come
right?
on.
So I can be here instead of spiking and then bottoming out and then not having a choice,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I think about what's in you comes out of you. When
Ooh.
you buy a tube of toothpaste, the same toothpaste that comes out in the beginning was the last toothpaste that came out, that went into that tube. And you think about you rolling that thing when it's almost loose and you don't tilted it to the side and got your thumb pushing to the middle. But here's the thing, what's coming out of that is what was already put in it. And when
Mhm.
life is pushing on you that hard, what have you put inside of yourself to come out of you in those pressure moments? Because you don't
Mm.
feel it when you're under pressure. You
Mm-mm.
feel it in those times of lull. You feel it in those times when things are going well or at least decent. I'm constantly talking to my clients that they are professionals at putting their stuff in a box and filing the box away.
That's
But
it.
after a while, The warehouse can't hold nothing else. And you notice you walk in there, the floor is wet because your mess is leaking on the floor and it's all on your shoes. And it don't call first and it don't make reservations to say, is this a convenient time for you to have a breakdown? Is this a convenient time for everything to feel like all hell is breaking loose? It does not. Your
Would
trauma,
you be okay with me scheduling your migraine on Wednesday at 12:30?
ma'am.
Right. And then we say things like, I don't know where it came from. It came out of the blue. We're so detached from ourselves that we don't notice when it's revving up. We don't notice, right?
Yeah.
Because we say things like, well, I go home and I turn it off. That ain't real.
Or I pop open a bottle of wine until it goes away. Man.
And truth be told, it hasn't gone away. It's just kind of camouflaged. And then before you know it, now the next issue, instead of it being a new thing, well, now it's just compiling on the old one, and then a new, and then a new one. And so instead of you just piling garbage on top of.
Listen, and then wondering why it's smelling.
Ooh.
Come on. You know, so are you willing to excavate? You know, you think about an infection, you know, we don't treat it at the surface, you know, because people show up to therapy and they want us to throw band-aids on bullet wounds. And it's like, sweetheart, we have got to get to the source of the infection and clean that stuff out and then begin to heal. But that requires, again, the planning. You know, are you willing to put resources towards your self-care? Are you willing to put financial resources? Are you willing to put time resources? Are you willing to make space for you? You know, you show up for everybody else, but when was the last time you showed up for you?
And listen, the way you treat yourself informs others how to treat you.
Set a precedent.
Because if I abuse me, how can I expect anybody else to take care of me? And I want to be clear, I'm not blaming here. I'm not sliding to that space of victim blaming. But what I'm saying is, if we don't care for ourselves and make ourselves important, it's going to be hard then to claim, well, I need other spaces to see me as important.
Yes.
If we want our children, for those of us who are parents, to know how to care for themselves, they have to see us as parents taking care of ourselves, right?
Yes.
It's okay. I can be a good mother and still need a couple minutes before I engage with you.
Listen.
And I can give you language, right? Like, mommy just got done with work. I need this amount of time. For me, it's hiding in my room behind a locked door, right? I'm gonna lock this door.
Listen.
I love you. I see you in 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna come be the best mom you ever had, right?
Listen, but
that is okay.
But we're equipping them. Now we're challenging generational curses. Because I remember there was a time when my anxiety, girl, listen, I told Reverend, don't
Mike is gonna have to kick us off of here because.
But here's this thing. I know that I struggle with anxiety. And here I am, a therapist. So people make this assumption, oh, you're a doctor, you don't struggle with that. I said, that's cute because medical doctors have PCPs, but we're not going to bother that. Here's the thing. I went and got me a weighted blanket. And when I tell you that became the new boo, and I would come home from work and be stressed out. And my kids literally meet me at the door and they have a happy dance they do when mommy would come home from working a 10-hour day. And so they ready to see me. They show me everything, talk to me. And I'm thinking, I just need a moment. So it became a part of our ritual, a part of our routine that we come in and we turn the lights down and we lay under the weighted blanket. So I have my children now at a place where if they're feeling kind of wound up, they're like, Mom, I think I just need to lay quietly for a while with your blanket. Can I use the special blanket? So now, instead of having these children who feel like they're being neglected because I'm setting a boundary, because you're allowed to set boundaries with your children and your spouse, because boundaries are healthy. I'm now giving them language to honor their own space. You know, I always tease my husband. I'm like, oh, my kids' spouses better do right by me because they gonna have it together by the time they get to being married.
There's some good ones for you.
Listen, but they have language around talking about anxiety, because I was raised in a house where we didn't talk about that. My grandmother had horrible claustrophobia and anxiety, but we talked about as a grandma just having a rough day, you know.
Yes.
So now we don't have this language. So then when we have these struggles, we don't even know what to call it, or we think there's a deficit in us. But when we decide to push back against those things and educate ourselves and do what we need to do to take care of ourselves, like you said, we're teaching those around us what to do so that when they do give it to us, we don't reject it or wonder if it's suspect. We understand
Mm,
I'm deserving of your care. I'm deserving of your grace because I've learned to give those things to myself.
mm. Ooh, they gonna have to boot us out of here.
Yes,
But
they
we,
are, ma'am. We got 10,
you know,
it's
we
10 to the
we've
hour.
been we've been talking about, that caring for yourself and quality time and loving on yourself. But the other really huge component in this whole pandemic and all of this unrest is connection and
Yes.
community.
Come on.
And we spend so much time talking about community. And so, Bernice, since you on a roll, I just kind of want to toss it to you a little bit, to kick us off in this talk about how do we maintain healthy connections and community during this time.
Yes. One of the things that I have toiled with and have had to be pushed to do, and I think sometimes God has literally taken me out and got his own switch to get me together, is learning to be vulnerable and knowing that
Mm,
that's not a sign of weakness. I think especially as therapists, it's easy to get caught in the caregiver mindset of, I take pride in caring for my boys. I take pride in caring for my husband. To love them well brings me joy. But what does it mean to allow other people to love me well? And what does
mm,
that mean to be vulnerable enough to allow them to do it? To not walk in this false perception of I have to have it all together. And I have
mm,
found the more willing I have been to be vulnerable and talk about the struggles of being a mom, of being an entrepreneur and owning my own business. Because like I walked away from a very comfortable job that I could have retired from very comfortably, to chase purpose. And the fear that hit me, like, I was
ooh,
cruising and doing my own little thing. And one day I sat in my office and was like, you're not going to have health insurance. You have 2 kids and a husband at home. What is about to happen? And the fear and anxiety that hit me, and how I took off out of my office, went and got in my truck and called my best friend and sat in my car and just cried and talked to her. And that didn't make me weak, and it didn't mean I was crazy. It meant that I was a human having a human experience. And that
mm,
in that, letting her love me well reinforced our connection, so that when life got rough for her, she knew Bernice is a safe place for me to show up and I can bring all of me to the table. And she
mm,
doesn't just want the convenient pieces of me. She wants
mm.
all of me,
All
even
of
the
me.
pieces that might push against some of her, the way she walks through life, but she wants all of me. Having people who will honor all of you and not just the parts of you that they can benefit from is, for me, it's been one of the most powerful ways that I have maintained and built new healthy connections. Like even just working with you and being your direct report, like we were already cool, like you was my girl already, but just the way our relationship has grown and how God has used that space to help grow both of us in what our purpose is. But imagine if we showed up in competition with one another as two Black
Hmm.
women trying to vie for who's going to be the most powerful in the room, but instead
Hmm.
coming into this place saying, how can I support you? One of the best parts of my week is when you send me an email saying, can you do me a small favor? I'm like, I can do you a big favor, boo. What you need? Like, I got you. Like, there's something beautiful about showing up for other people because
Hmm.
it feels good to do that, to love on you and remind you that one, you're an amazing person, but you kicking tail at doing something as Lynn, Dr. Topman has said, we building the plane as we flying it to reinforce to you that you're doing well. That builds our connection. And it's not from this false place. It's from a place of, I want to see you succeed. I want to
Yeah.
see you rise.
Yeah.
That to me it builds on those connections.
Well, and then I wanna ask you to talk a little bit more. I just love the sound of you talking.
Oh,
Can
bless
you
you.
talk a little bit more about how do we specifically do that during the pandemic, right? Because I know what I hear people saying to me is, well, normally I would gather with family. I would go to my girlfriend's house. I would, do something with my honey bunny, and I can't do those things. So
Mhm.
they're feeling like they can't get connected.
Right.
And so then we start having to figure out like how do we challenge that? So I wonder if you can share
Yes.
how you would encourage people to think beyond what you don't have.
Right. And I think that's the first piece. If we focus on what we don't have, we're gonna have this long list. But if you
Absolutely.
begin to challenge the thought of like, well, what if I did it differently? You know, I have had dance parties with my girlfriends on Zoom, and I get it. We are zoomed out, child. If I don't Zoom again, till the Lord cracks the sky.
It'll be too soon.
Listen, ma'am, but just gathering that way of just having time to just chill with one another and just sit and talk and turn up some music too loud, learning to just celebrate what you can celebrate. I have a girlfriend of mine, we would, when it was warmer, because bless your hearts, we in Michigan and I don't do winter. But when it was warmer outside, we literally would park in a parking lot, a parking spot away from each other, and roll down our windows to talk to one another, just so I could see her face up front and close. Those small things, or being willing to start some new traditions. I think that's something that we can birth out of this is, you can still have an ugly sweater contest virtually. You can have a cookie baking contest virtually. Like, you can do these things differently. How do you show up and love on people? Even if I can't come in your house, I can drop something on your porch to remind you that I'm thinking about you, but I think it's really pushing the envelope and being creative in how we do that, and being willing to talk to people, and actually take the time to pick up a phone and call folks and not necessarily text everything.
You mean this device actually calls people? It don't just text and connect to Facebook.
As my mama used to tell me, it's got a red and a green button.
Listen, it used to have a cord back in the day.
They don't know nothing about pulling the cord to go around the corner so your mama didn't hear you talking on the phone.
Look, and I don't mean the USB, baby. That thing was twirled, always tangled.
Listen, it was a whole situationship. But being willing to do something differently, because like we can't gather the way we used to. I hear people say we don't gather now, so no one's missing when we gather again. And I respect that and I honor that. But that doesn't mean we can't connect. It doesn't mean we don't get to laugh. It doesn't mean we can't still have fun. We just have to be creative. Even if it's like, hey, let's go drive through some lights and your car's gonna be in front of my car and I'm gonna have my phone on speaker and we're gonna be going and owing and gushing together as we have this shared experience. And you bring the hot cocoa and I'm gonna bring some popcorn and we're gonna swap stuff. You can create these new experiences, but are you willing to not do what's easy, which is to just say that I can't?
Yeah. Well, and I think about even maintaining connection inside the home, right? If you have a family inside your home, because I think it's easy to think, well, I'm in the house with these people all day, every day. So of course we're connected. But again, is it quality connection in time? We found ourselves in a rut, even in our household. And so breaking up that time and doing something intentional with one another that then connected us with others. So for example, we had the kids create, just these cards, these kid-made cards that they were going to send to their grandparents, right? All the grandparents. It was a surprise for the grandparents. They got to get something cute and kid-friendly, like all the glue sticks.
Right.
And then we had time as a family together, right? So we were able to do connection in the house, utilize the U.S. Postal Service. That is still a thing. Stamps are real.
They are. They cost too much, but they're real.
Send something that was then a surprise and something that could light up a loved one's, space. And none of that was things we would think of before. We don't mail, you do postcards, we send a text. We'll do something different, to your point. And just an example of a way that we have to maintain connection both outside and inside the household. Even if you don't have children, maybe it's just you and your partner or your spouse. Right. You're gonna be connected too.
And y'all can be goofy and have fun. Like, I remember when it was just me and my husband and we've thrown some Motown and slow dance in the living room. Like, sweetie, you can date your boo in your house by yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's all of these opportunities. And even just with the virtual, because I want to speak to the virtual learning a little bit, because I think we get so caught up in feeling like this is this taskmaster thing of I got to do this, they've got to do that. But one of the coolest thing that was birthed out of this for us was Patterson Camp. We created a camp this summer for our kids for 3 weeks, and we would go 1 week on, 1 week off, because mommy and daddy was running out of ideas, but of these STEM activities for our kids to do. So I have an aspiring astronomer and an aspiring paleontologist / preacher.
Of course you do.
Of course, girl, the bishop is real. But we did a thing one day where we literally showed them YouTube videos on engineering. And our son went from wanting to be an astronomer to saying, well, is there any way I can do engineering and astronomy? We were like, yes, an aerospace engineer. He was like, oh, yes. Like we let them craft lightsabers out of pool noodles. So here was this $3 that I spent at the dollar store, and they had to design it first. And then we showed them their materials, like, well, what you gonna tweak about your design? Because this is what you got to work with. And just the joy that they felt, to the point that they was about to worry us to death and had it circled on the calendar, like, well, the next day at Patterson camp is in 6 days. So, we're excited about this.
Be
But
ready.
that's something that we never would have thought of had we not been thrown into a pandemic. So
Yeah.
be willing
Yeah.
to do it different.
Yeah. And lean into, I love what you said, leaning into what you do have, focusing on, in my work, we call it chasing the resilience, leaning into what you have. It's not the toxic positivity of saying it's all perfect. I'm Teflon, nothing bothers me.
Come on.
We acknowledge the losses, we acknowledge what we don't have. Then we also, and even more importantly, and intentionally doing it on purpose, look for what we do have. So,
Yeah.
and I think that brings us, to the next and kind of ending point for this discussion, but is what are the resources in this community? And I just feel so incredibly grateful for being able to do the work that we do out of population health, and working with my supervisor, Dr. Lynn Todman, who's probably blushing as she's probably listening in right now. I won't make her come off mute or anything like that, but the work that we've been doing, not only in educating, but supporting community in that Center for Better Health. So if you hadn't heard about it, right in the heart of Benton Harbor, offering a number of social services supports, as well as mental health services, which includes individual counseling. It was something that we thought was going to be brief, that we'd be able to maybe make a big impact for a short amount of time, and that it would end at the end of this month. And, the universe decided that that wasn't going to be a thing, and that instead we were going to be able to continue on. And so as it relates to mental health services, we have a stellar team of clinicians. I mean, absolutely stellar. I tell people it's free, but it ain't cheap. These are people who are experts and are very good at what they do, but have a passion for working with our community, and are providing therapy services. And, I know therapy and counseling, if you've never done it, or if it's, taboo in your particular, family or community, can be like, oh, but think about it as, going and having a judgment-free conversation.
Yes.
And some people need really long conversations, and some people just need a short conversation. Right. It might be for something that's only last a few weeks, and something that might take a couple months to figure out. And wherever you're at, and anywhere in between is okay. We have those services, and we also are very supportive of the fact that we know we may not be a good fit for everyone. So whether it's because, maybe there's just not a good fit clinician on our team, or maybe you need something that we don't offer, making sure that we're able to refer people to good resources, whether it's something a little more intensive or specific that we don't have. So even if you don't quite know where to turn, Bernice and our wonderful admin assistant, Sharice, will get you on the path to getting the help that you need, and knowing that there's no shame in asking for assistance.
At all. I think it's a beautiful thing when you allow people to come in and help you. And I tell clients, the hardest part is to make that first phone call of like, oh Lord, what's going to happen? And, and then when people have to show up in your office that first time, and they sitting in the waiting room, like, do everybody know why I'm here? And they looking around. And now, because, the beauty of technology, as long as you have capabilities, you're sitting in the comfort of your home, or even in your vehicle. Cause I got some folks sitting in their car, they're like, I want nobody in my business. Sit in your vehicle then, baby. Therapy. And if you don't have those resources at home at your disposal, we wanted to make sure that was not a barrier to care. You are able to come to our brick and mortar, and you will get a private office. You're not going to be sitting in the lobby talking about your business. You're going to be behind a closed door, to actually have some meaningful therapy take place. But I want you to know you're worth the work. You are worth the work that it takes to take care of you. I like to encourage people to know you're worth the disruption, because when you start to take care of yourself, it disrupts some things. You know,
Mhm.
it's going to disrupt some perceptions. It's going to disrupt some schedules. It's going to disrupt some normal things, but you're worth that disruption because you're worth the work. So we
Mhm.
really want to do whatever we can to partner with you, even if you can't connect with us, to make sure we get you connected to quality service.
Yeah. Well, and I just peeking at the chat real quick, the question came in of what do you think about a yearly mental health checkup too before you quote unquote need the help? And
Mhm.
listen, you don't have to be in crisis to come and come to counseling. We'd
Say
prefer
it.
that you came before crisis, to be
Right.
honest, because a lot of crises could be avoided if we came in when it was like, I don't know, maybe we could talk about this. Because again, just coming in for services doesn't mean you're committing to, years worth of work. You might just need a little touch up, right?
Right.
And that's
Right.
okay.
Right. And even if you just need a safe space to think out loud, to talk through some things, I think people believe that it has to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things just need to be polished. You know,
Mm.
we're not
Ooh,
doing surgery. Sometimes we just need to do some polishing, you know,
yeah.
and to just come in and have that space to talk about those things. And it might bring up some other stuff that you like, oh, okay, maybe it was a couple things in the corner that I need to look at. But I love when I have people who are like, life's not necessarily upside down. I just want to learn to take care of myself. I want to communicate more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I want to like me more. I want to
Mm.
appreciate me more. Those are all things that are fair game for the therapeutic relationship. And not to
Absolutely.
say we don't deal with trauma. I mean, Tasha is a doggone trauma specialist. You know, you do what you do and you do it well, ma'am. You do it well. But there's space for that. But don't feel like, you got to be bailing water in the canoe for you
Mm.
to be able to come in and get some.
It could be you've listened to this presentation and you're thinking, I need to know how to develop a self-care routine. That's
We
it.
got we
We
got
got you. We got you because we want you to have that. I tell people all the time, like my goal is to work myself out of a job. I
listen.
want I want people to know how to care for themselves and one another so
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
When they see me, all they need to say, "What up, Tasha? How you doing? I'm doing great." And
And
that
it's
I'm doing
real.
great is real. No fibs. That is
Listen.
real. Right.
Listen.
So you just want to encourage everybody to know that those resources are out there and they're out there before you're in crisis.
Right.
Right.
They are
And
free.
knowing, and it's free. How often do you get amazing things for free? And what is also wonderful is that, because we are connected to the center, people may come in if maybe, for example, somebody was experiencing some depression and we find out they've lost their job and maybe they're in danger of losing their home. Well, it makes sense that you'd be depressed. I don't imagine that you'd be doing cartwheels somewhere.
Right.
And that we have a more efficient way to get you connected to some additional resources because it's
Right.
part of this integrated system. So, I always encourage people, if you don't know what to do, but you just know you have a question, maybe you don't even know what the question is, just call us and we'll walk alongside you and help you to figure it out.
Right. And we've had people call who are like, I don't know if this is a therapy thing. I don't know if this is what I need. And
Mm.
I get the pleasure to call them back, Norm, because our administrative assistant is a beast, but she would tell you, I'm not a therapist. She's like, I keep the therapist organized, but I'm not a therapist. And she'll give me a call, let me know, and I call you back, and we triage what's going on, and we figure out what do you need, and how do we get you connected. It's not a, oh, we can't help you, so you're out of luck. It's a,
Yeah.
we can't help you, but let me figure out who can. So
Yeah.
we really, our goal is to partner with the community because we want to be an example of loving one another well, period. You
Yeah.
know, it's not about what we're getting out of this. We are excited to just give this back. We do this.
Yeah.
Love it. We're purposed to do this work. And for us, it's a part of us just being us to be able to do this in the community.
Yeah. And I want to encourage anyone listening who maybe is outside of the Benton Harbor area that, there are other resources. If you are employed, I encourage you to check with your employer about any EAP, employee assistance programs you may have that gives you access to care. And if you have a spouse who is employed, Usually you can also access those benefits as a spouse. If there's any students listening, most colleges and universities have either some kind of counseling center. This not just like academic counseling, but mental health counseling available either right on campus or within the community that they can refer you to. So whatever community you are joining us from, the message is that there are resources, there's accessible resources out there. The beauty and the curse that has been Corona is that, telehealth is alive and well right now. So, you could be connected to a counselor who's up in the UP, it only took you 2 minutes to connect. So,
Right.
I encourage you to utilize those resources. They're there for a reason. And let's disrupt this idea of shame behind accessing them.
Perfect. Well, Miss Tasha, we have a wonderful question in the Q&A, and I think this is perfect for you because this is your demographic. The question says, how do I teach middle and high school students about self-care?
Mm. Well, remember that conversation we were having about giving people language, right? I think that we take for granted how important modeling is, right? Demonstrating that language, but then also being intentional and making sure, like purposefully developing that language with them when you notice things, encouraging them. Our kids, they tend to have, these schedules for school and for after school activities. Start to teach them how to work into that schedule, things to do for themselves, right? What is your break time? What are you doing over your break time, right? If you have high school students who are, looking to transition into, post-secondary education, framing that as caring for themselves, caring for their future. So it's all about giving people language and space and allowing for when they don't get it right. Right? When maybe they waited too long or what have you, then being able to have those conversations about, remember when we talked about X, Y, and Z and how we take care of ourselves. Well, I noticed this happened. I wonder what we could do maybe next time, right? How can I support you in caring for yourself?
Right.
I wanted to ask too, we had a couple of questions that came in prior to the presentation starting. And by the way, I just want to, because I've been sitting here just absorbed completely. So absolutely excellent content. And thank you so much for being so important and doing such important work in our community. I personally appreciate it. And I know everybody's feeling very similarly. So one of the questions that came in is how do you know where that line is drawn? Like if someone's doing a self-assessment and they're trying to make that determination, where they're trying to figure out whether it's just a normal reaction to stress or really a serious mental health issue or crisis. I know the option is to come in and have a kind of a self-assessment done or an annual assessment, but what would be signs that somebody's really slipping into something more serious than a normal reaction to stress?
Yeah. Well, Bernice, you go ahead and take that.
Okay. Well, I think first of all, we need to know what our normal is or where our healthy baseline is. And if I can't identify my baseline, I have no idea when I'm wavering from it. And I think also having people around us who are honest enough with us to tell us when we're operating outside of our baseline. My husband is a great judge of when Bernice needs to have several seats. And he will remind me that I need to have several seats and that I'm burning the candle at both ends. But I started to think about how symptoms begin to linger, because we all have rough days, and I like to think about your emotions as a house. And, you have this house with an attic and you have a ground floor and then you have a basement. We all visit the basement to go get some stuff every once in a while. But the question is, have you moved the furniture down to the basement? Did you move your bedroom down to the basement? Did you move the living room down to the basement? Or is it just something that you visited and you were able to walk back up the stairs to that ground level? Because you think about it, even when things are coasting super high and you're in the attic of your life and like everything is coming up roses, you don't live in the attic because the attic only feels like the attic because there's a ground floor. So being able to monitor yourself to say, is this lingering? Am I able to feel like I'm able to come out of this? Am I noticing that I'm not feeling as well? Because a lot of times people will have physical symptoms that they tune into, but not necessarily the emotional symptoms. So like your anxiety might be getting worse. You have no idea, but you're noticing you're having racing thoughts and you can't seem to shut your brain off at night. You can't stop moving, and you're fidgeting with things. Like, I'm a person who I always have something here sitting at my desk that I'm playing with and fidgeting with. Do you find that your knee can't seem to sit still and look like you bouncing a baby 24/7? Like, is your body giving you cues that are saying something's off? But I think if you feel like, or not even feel like, if you're noticing that I'm able to get back to my reset, I'm able to get back to my baseline, yep, regular stress. But if I'm feeling like I can't find that baseline again, it might be something more serious going on.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned too some examples. You both have families. I have a family. I'm more overwhelmed that way than with the loneliness and isolation. So in
Mhm.
fact, I crave some of that. I would love to be
Right.
lonely and isolated a little bit. And I find that going out into my backyard or whatever. But if somebody is the other way, and this was a question that came in where they're alone and they're taking the pandemic very seriously and in very healthy ways, not even
Mhm.
allowing their own children into their house.
Mhm.
What are choices that they can make? They're adult children, by the way, so it's not it's
Because
not
I'm a mandated
neglect.
reporter, Mike. You got to watch what
Yeah,
you
that's
say.
right. But their question is, what can they do? I know the parking lot conversations and those kinds of things, but what other choices that can they make to come out of that isolation or that loneliness?
Well, I think there's a couple parts. I think there's what they can do, and I think there's what the people who love them can do.
Mhm.
So I think that, if you're, being really strict on your COVID precautions, thank you, because that's hard to do. And there's a lot of pressures to, just do this one thing, or, just let this one person in. But if that is the choice that you are making, for your health and safety and for the safety of others, then also being just as intentional of how I'm going to care for myself at this time, especially if you're more of an extroverted person. For those of us who are introverts like me, having a few days where I'm by myself is not going to bother me. I probably could have done this whole pandemic by myself and would have been fine. But for others who, crave social connection, like my husband would not have survived. He's a total extrovert. And so how do I maintain that connection? So even if I'm not leaving out, going places, how do I still invite people in? Is there ways to have conversation, window conversations? It may not feel like the most appealing thing at first, but it's something, right? Like, what can we do? What can we have? I think about birthdays, and I think one of my favorite things that's come out of this is all the birthday parades, because now the whole community's celebrating with you. Oh my, it's so beautiful. And it's so cheap for me as a mom. Like, I love it.
Right.
So how do we continue to be creative? And then from the flip side, because the onus isn't all just on us as like one individual making sure that I'm perfectly okay, because we live in community. And so as people who love other people, what do we do for those? If we know that someone is by themselves, or even if it's just, a husband and wife, or wife and wife, a husband, whoever, partners, living together, but there's no one else, it's just the two of them. How do we continue to love on and support them, right? So reaching out, don't always wait for someone to reach out to you and tell you they're struggling, right? I think often we say things like, oh, let me know if you need something. Ain't nobody gonna let you know.
They're not.
So
you don't let
reach
people
out.
know when you need something.
So reaching out and being preemptive, I tell people, do something loving, right? Do something that communicates, I see you, I'm here for you, I care about you, I notice you. And again, in that safe way, but taking those proactive steps.
Right. And it can be as simple as, especially if they are quarantining tightly, saying, I will go to the grocery store for you and put your stuff on your porch. My godmother, when they had a COVID scare, like, I was her personal grocery getter, and we had a little system where she put the money out in her sun porch, and I delivered the groceries to the sun porch. But then we would sneak small things in, like the boys would draw her a picture, for Grandma Smith, and it was just those small things that would make her day. Actually taking the time to just call people out of the blue, those things have just really touched people's spirits to say, I'm thinking about you, not because you called me, not because you set out your Batman symbol, but just because you were on my mind and I wanted you to know I was thinking about you. You don't know how that 5-minute phone call might really touch somebody's day.
Absolutely.
Great points. A little kindness goes a long way.
Mm,
Especially now.
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially now.
And it don't cost time to be nice.
Right. Another question that came in is regard. A lot of people are feeling food insecurity issues right now and stressed by keeping their family fed. But this question is specifically around diet and what role diet plays in. So you have food, but maybe not the right food, or you're not eating well. What's the dynamic between diet and mental health?
Yeah.
Yes.
What you put in you comes out of you. If you just putting trash in, you're not gonna have much fuel to really, you don't you don't put cheap fuel in an Aston Martin. You put a certain kind of fuel in there because you want it to perform. And I think everybody has struggled with the COVID-19, as we say, the 19 pounds that everybody has gained sitting in quarantine. Because we eat out of boredom, of like not even actually being hungry, but it's sitting here. But I think one, giving yourself some healthy options, if that's a possibility, because, and let's be real, everybody doesn't have access to healthy options.
Yeah.
And figuring out how do we get those resources to people. And there are lots of local food banks. I know here, I'm actually located in Kalamazoo. I know our church, we have Tuesday groceries where you get absolutely free drive-up groceries. You drive up, you pop your trunk, fruits, vegetables, and meat, and they put it in your trunk. But if you're not in the Kalamazoo area, being willing to, you can reach out to the Center for Better Health and we can get you in contact with different places for you to get healthy foods. But if food insecurity isn't necessarily your issue, but it's like the things you're choosing, challenge yourself to create some new things. I've gotten my oldest child to eat more vegetables during the pandemic than I have in the rest of his life. Now his 6-year-old brother is still on strike, and like French fries is the only vegetable he will consume. But having your kids cook with you has allowed them to be more willing to try new foods, or buying stuff you wouldn't normally buy at the grocery store and be like, let's see what we can make with this. But just being willing to get out of your comfort zone, because you have more time to cook. It's just kind of the reality. I have cooked more now than I have probably in the 38 years I've been living. But being willing to do something different, and spice it up, try some stuff. And if you don't like it, well, drink a lot of water while you eat it and try something different tomorrow.
Great.
And I think, we have to be mindful, Bernice, you talked about the fact that not everybody has access. So as we think about, if you are someone with access, if you are someone in a leadership role in the community, how do we address these things moving forward? And in times like this, shelf stable foods, those botched foods, those very heavily processed foods, they're cheap and it's easy to stock up on a whole lot of them. And, for people who, have very limited resources, that tends to be the go-to. And then when I think about even just within Berrien County and some of our areas where our residents don't have access to real grocery stores, right. And, they're going to convenience stores and gas stations to get their food, that is an issue, it doesn't become even an issue of choice anymore. It's all that I have. And so how do we then as community, because I always bring it back to community, support those individuals to where they even have the opportunity to achieve their level of optimal health, right? And to Bernice's other point of, trying new things, I've seen so many cooking demonstrations and try new this and try new that, as an opportunity for both connection and for, feeding ourselves and sustaining ourselves in a way that we don't come out of this, worse for wear, as best as possible.
I think we have time for at least one more question. It's in the queue there, but it's around resilience. And the question is, in a period like this, can you actually build resilience, or are you pretty much stuck with or resigned to keep the level of resilience that you had going into it?
No. So you can absolutely build resilience right now. We all have some level, right? I like to think about it like a rubber band. We all have some level of stretch. But the thing about it is, I can't just hope that I'll gain more resilience. I can't just be like, you know what, I hope tomorrow I'm more resilient. We have to intentionally build it. We have to do it on purpose. That comes from that self-care, right? Managing our stress, and finding ways to get that out of our body, literally get those toxins out of our body. But you can, because when you take that time out to notice what's happening with your body. Bernice, you described beautifully a number like those sensational responses our body has, those headaches, the stomach aches, my pinky toe hurts and I don't know why, or I got this migraine, this cough that won't go away. Those sensations that are telling us we need to focus on ourselves. Well, when you spend that time and you focus on yourself, you're not only, relaxing or maybe bringing down stress, that is actually part of building your resilience, building and maintaining your connections to people, especially if you're an extroverted person and you thrive off those social connections. That's building and maintaining your resilience. So none of these things are for grins and giggles, right? This is to get you through the long haul of this and any other stressor that comes along. Because the more that you flex that, the more that you grow that, the more you're going to be able to tolerate and be able to stay in your best brain. You see how I brought that all back around? Get you out of survival mode and keep you in your best brain.
Right. And one thing it made me think about is even how people, we're getting in that time of year where folks gonna start making their Facebook declaration of like, if you wasn't for me in 2020,
leaving you behind.
Right. And I'm cutting you off now. Okay, first of all, you don't have to wait till the new year to get rid of toxic people, because if we will begin to guard our peace, we will find that our resiliency increases. Because if there's certain people who are always sucking you dry, baby, stop handing them the straw. You get to be in control of that. You get to pull the straw back and say, I can love you, but I'm gonna love you from over here. Like I can't allow you to keep pulling on me, because I have learned as I have been brave enough to walk away from toxic situations and toxic individuals, all of a sudden I start feeling a little bit better. My stride gets a little bit stronger. And it's not so much that I did this whole overhaul, but the things that were draining me, I'm no longer giving them access to me. So that's a way to begin to do your resilience, your resilient walk and your resilient growth process, to guard yourself and make sure that the people around you are good for you.
Feeding
not just convenient.
Yes. Think about it like a plant. Even plants got to be pruned, right? Little clippage can be really healthy.
And it may be ugly, but it's going to make room for new growth.
Ooh.
Be willing. Be willing.
I don't want this to end. I know there's so much more there. I do have one other, if we have time, one other thing, and it's a simple question or observation, and that's the power of deep breathing. And I know when I used to coach public speaking quite a bit, and I would always, when that anxiety from wanting to, needing to get up in front of people, and people would start shaking, and just take some deep breaths. Is that something that helps with mental health or crisis moments, or what's the thinking around that?
Yeah, it can. And it's one of those where it's a tool. And not every tool works for everyone, and not every tool works every time. So for some people, breath work can actually be really triggering. For others, it can be really helpful and healing. So if you know that stopping and breathing is good for you, do that. Do more of that. For some people, they need to, they can ground by pushing up against something, right? Just feeling themselves being supported by a surface. It may be touching something, it may be smelling something. So whether it's taking a deep breath or just doing something that slows yourself down, yes, absolutely. And again, working on your mental wellness is not always therapy. It's those little moments, those little ways we take care of ourselves every day.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we could all, you could hear the thunderous applause.
Oh, I feel it. I feel it right here.
All in the heart. All in the heart.
It's definitely there. I mean, we're getting really nice comments in the chat and even in the question and answer. And thank you so much. You've covered so much. I don't know if I want to give you the opportunity for any closing thoughts, but I think we're definitely wrapping up here now in our time. And I want to be respectful of your time too. I know you both give a lot of yourselves and need to recharge. So I leave it to you for any closing thoughts you might have.
Bernice?
I'm like, I will go first because I want you to, you are the benediction, Miss Ma'am. I just want to encourage you all, learn to love yourself. You know, I'm a firm believer that I can love me into change. And it means I'm willing to change those things that do not support loving me. Do that because you are loved. You have never met me. Well, some of y'all have met me and Tasha, but I need you to know that there are people out here who care about you. And we are excited about you making time for you. We are excited about your mental wellness. So if nobody else tells you today that you are a beautiful, valuable person who deserves to be loved and taken care of, know that in the pits of your being, you are beautiful, you are valuable, you are worth being taken care of.
Yeah, and the final thing that I'll say, to add on to that, as we think about taking care of ourselves, but then also when we think about taking care of one another, and one of my favorite quotes, and to paraphrase, is something to the effect of, sometimes the people who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving ways. Knowing that as we are struggling to take care of ourselves, so is everyone else around us. And sometimes that extension of grace, that moment of kindness, is all that person needs, even if, they done called you every name but what your mama named you. Extending that grace even further than what you normally would, because we're all out here just trying to survive. And whatever way that we do that is the right way, and continue to love on one another, even if it doesn't feel like they're fully soaking it up in the way that you would want.
Beautiful words to end on. I want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for sharing yourself and your gifts with all of us and for our community. And this video will be posted out on the mendelcenter.com, our YouTube channel, as well as Facebook. And I did want to thank our sponsors too. We had the screen up at the beginning, but at least I want to list our 2020 and 2021 season sponsors. Please let them know how much you appreciate their support in helping us bring top-rated performances and presentations to Michigan's Great Southwest. Southwest Michigan Tourist Council, the Boulevard Inn and Bistro, Spectrum Health Lakeland, Meyer, Honor Credit Union, TPC Technologies, Krugel Lawton CPA, the Inn at Harbor Shores, and TCF Bank. Those are all our stage side sponsors. Our platinum sponsors and gold sponsors are listed on our website, plus all the people that have contributed to creating Bridges campaign, which has helped us keep these programs coming and keep our virtual doors open while our Mendel Center doors are closed. We've had over 150 events that have been postponed or canceled, and we're not done yet, unfortunately. But soon our doors will be open again, and we're happy that you joined us tonight and that we can continue connecting through getting ourselves together in important topics for our community and for each other. So happy holidays, everybody. Thanks again, Tasha and Bernice. And
thank you.
Good night. And thank you, Grace, for all your technical work behind the scenes.
Yes.
Thank
Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Be blessed.